excellent 80s movies podcast on the Most Excellent Podcast Network. It's the podcast where a filmmaker, a comedian, and an author have all been struck by lightning, and now all of a sudden we have zany personalities, which we are going to use to take another look at the 80s movies we loved, hated, hated to love, and loved to hate, with a haze of nostalgia, but also with 2018 eyes. This is episode 23, Short Circuit, a movie selection from 1986.
It's the ultimate soldier. It doesn't get happy, it doesn't get sad, it doesn't laugh at your jokes.
It is quite simply the most sophisticated robot on Earth.
At Nova Robotics, the future is in good hands.
You're doing real good. Just keep working on those last two bars.
Thanks to Dr. Newton Crosby.
Originally, I designed it as a marital aid.
But artificial intelligence has gotten too smart.
It's malfunctioning. It might not do anything.
But it could decide to blow away anything that moves, couldn't it?
Because $11 million worth of robot just hit the road. Number 5 is alive.
Welcome to my planet.
You just have to find number 5, get some answers.
Why don't you come on in my house?
And it's got a lot of living to do.
Whatever it takes to put that stupid contraption out of commission, that's what you do.
Need input. Haven't had enough of this stuff. More input. More input.
They can seem quite lifelike, but they are still machines.
Number 5 is alive. Nice software. How it happens, who knows, but it has happened.
A new comedy adventure from John Badham, director of War Games.
They're gonna be after you. We gotta get out of here now. Keep alive!
Ali Sheedy, Steve Gutenberg, and number 5,
Beautiful.
Short Circuit.
I am alive.
Ooh.
So if you were hoping that E.T. had a bazooka, this is the movie for you.
I was hoping that, very sincerely.
Laser bazooka.
Finally.
Finally, we all get everything that we want. No Fisher Stevens in the trailer. Interesting. All right, let's get into it.
A curious absence.
Okay, so I am Nathan Blackwell, filmmaker from Squishy Studios. With me, as always, is...
Krissy Lenz, director of National Comedy Theater, improviser, and comedian.
And with us, as always...
As many
As sometimes.
often as possible.
Is this your 4th episode?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Number 4.
Friend of the podcast, author, Craig Michael Curtis.
Hello, I'm Craig Michael Curtis, author, friend of the podcast. And I am alive.
Yay, no disassemble.
So this was this movie was your request. It's
Yes.
your fault that we're here.
Yeah.
It is definitely a movie way back when you began the movies podcast for the 80s. I liked the initial list that I saw. But I also felt very disappointed that 2 movies were not on that first run of lists, the first 10 I think it was, and the 2 movies that I demanded be added to the list at some point.
Well, I think our friendship is built out of disappointment and demand.
Yeah. Disappointment, yes. Anger and spite are the foundations of a good friendship. Yeah.
This is definitely so you had Rocky IV and Short Circuit, which are very 80s movies.
Yes, and it's not just that they're movies that were made in the 80s, but they were movies that their shelf life is 1980 to 1989.
Right.
And so that's what they were the first 2 movies I thought of when I thought of 80s movies. Just because, not necessarily because they define the 80s, but they felt so much just in that bubble of the decade where as soon as 1990 came around, the expiration for Short Circuit kind of comes. I think they did Short Circuit then in 86, and I think 89 Short Circuit 2. And they were talking about doing another one, but then 1990 hit, and it was like, you know what?
It's time for
Not
Wesley
this
Snipes
decade.
movies now.
Exactly.
And Pauly Shore.
It's time to move on. And it's this I think is one of the quintessential movies that was made for the 80s.
Yeah, we were talking about, so we watched this movie together because you can't rent it right now. You can only buy it, and we're too cheap to each buy a copy. So we watched it.
Like Young Guns, it will become streaming free as soon as the podcast drops.
It's in the vault right now.
That was awesome. I was so excited when Young Guns came out on Netflix.
But this was a movie that both of us saw probably a half dozen times when we were kids. And then almost like a science experiment, we vowed never to. We just never saw it again.
There was an unspoken agreement to.
So everything
stop watching it.
everything seemed familiar, but even though I didn't remember most of it, I knew I had seen it so many times. It was just one of those things, because I don't remember it being on TV. Maybe it was probably rentals. It had to be rentals.
I have no idea how. I must have seen it dozens of times when I was a kid, and again, not for 30 years until earlier today, but I can't even figure out how I saw it so many times because my family didn't own a VHS copy of it, and I don't think Nathan's did.
So it must have been when you were a little kid and you rented a movie. You saw it a couple of times. It was that was your window. It's oh my god, it's due back on Wednesday. We've got to keep watching it. You can probably chime in with how kids will just rewatch movies.
Oh, absolutely. With the VHS, it's just the time it takes to rewind back to the beginning.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like
again.
when we're kids, we're programming our brain with the things we like.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah,
and you have to watch something until you've memorized it.
Yes, and some movies stay with you forever,
Yes.
Three Amigos, or
Absolutely.
Big Trouble in Little China, or Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Not so much Short Circuit.
No, but it is like you said.
It's been sitting there in the back of your head.
There's moments that you can never forget, right? No
There's
Disassemble.
moments that you can never forget.
Johnny Five, or no, I guess he's just number 5.
He's only Johnny 5 at the very, very end of the movie.
The very last line of the movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
But,
I shall be hence
5.
known as Johnny Five.
I guess that is from the second one, mostly that he's Johnny Five.
Yeah, he's Johnny 5 in the second one. Nathan
I have
Ray at the
no
very,
memories
very
of the
end
second one.
of the second. Well, I have two
When
memories.
he's picking out names. Also, the first name he suggests for himself is Kevin, and I'm really upset that he didn't just go with Kevin. I'm Kevin, guys.
No.
I'm Kevin.
What a horrible name, Kevin. I'm not going with Kevin. Johnny 5,
Yeah, that sounds friendly.
I think he realized that, we had that song that was specifically made for this movie halfway through. Here's Johnny, he said. So he probably decided, I better be Johnny because they paid for that song.
Yeah.
Right.
And they were probably thinking that was going to get an Academy Award for that song, too. Because that was such a...
What? It's Doctor Who.
Velociraptors.
What are you here? You're here to tell us something. What are we missing?
I turned the volume on so that we could play the trailer.
That was Chrissy's phone. This is a great... we've seen several of our actors from the 80s, many of which we've just recently seen.
Yep.
We've got Steve Guttenberg, who we just saw in 3 Men and a Baby.
At long last, more Gutenberg.
Guys, buckle in. The
Yeah.
Goot is here.
And he's not more likable in this story.
I would say he's more likable.
Would you?
He was less likable in the other movie. It's all a matter of phrasing. And then Ali Sheedy, I thought, did a great job, even though you were just saying that her character is nonsensical.
Yeah, what is she even doing here? Besides those few moments that are memorable, the rest of this I completely deleted from my brain for forever. Her whole character is that she's a flibbity-gibbet who loves every animal and is in a string of abusive relationships.
She compulsively takes in animals, and she is in
stray
an
men.
on-again, off-again relationship with...
She's slow to trust,
a
but easy
horrible
to forgive.
human being.
Yes.
The guy is first time we see him, he is trying to steal her dog so that he can sell it for medical science. But you get the sense that she's still holding the door open. Maybe I can make this relationship work. She
She's
does
gonna
have a
fix
nice
it.
car that I apparently paid for. So maybe we'll give it one more try after he stops trying to steal my dog.
But she does do a great job of selling the relationship and the scenes with number 5. She's there. It's kind of how Mark Hamill just is so there with Yoda. You immediately buy.
He invested in and said, "This is not going to look stupid. I'm not going to kind of give an eye to the eye and say, yeah, I know I'm talking to a puppet." He's completely invested in this looking like you are interacting with another character.
And then we've got G.W. Bailey.
Okay, wait. Can we just circle back real quick to Ali Sheedy?
Sure.
So when she first meets Johnny Five, she thinks that he is an alien, and so
For like for the course of an entire night, she assumes he's an alien.
years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so it's almost there. Like, this movie straight up is the movie responsible for this movie is E.T.
Yes, it even Johnny Five looks like
E.T.-ish.
Yeah.
Like with his head shape and his disgusting bottom body and everything that's hideous and unlovable about him is all straight up E.T. But then when she...
So do you like metal E.T. more than fleshy
Robo E.T., Mecha E.T.
I do. I do, but I hate them both.
As we've discussed, you can listen to our E.T. episode.
Please
Krissy
do.
has a complicated relationship with E.T.
Not that complicated. I'm not into it. But like when she finds out he's a robot, she's disappointed. What? You're a robot? Yeah, it's a fucking robot. Look at it.
You've been having full-on human emotional conversations with a robot. That's still impressive.
I mean, who cares? Like,
Yeah, and she's like really disappointed that, a sentient robot. I thought I was talking to a metallic alien.
Yeah, and you get tons of these
man.
like full-on like Close Encounter / like Back to the Future scenes where you have like this orange light behind them and
Yeah.
like this mystic thing. It's like, it's like it like the music totally feels like Back to the Future, like Zemeckis kind of scene. Like it's full on going there.
Yep. And then she's like, "Oh shucks, why does nothing good ever happen to me?"
I'm calling the cops and getting a reward.
Yep.
And then there was like one point where she's talking to him, kind of angling for is there a reward for this? Well, no, it was like $100 or something. The guy's, BSing her. Yeah, and she like, Johnny Five's in the background like chasing animals and stuff. And then she goes, once she realizes she's not getting a reward out of this, she says, wait, where'd he go? And then says, what? Is he gone? Then she immediately says, no, I found him. Goodbye. I don't know was it like she was planning on stealing away with the robot at this point? I don't think she was, but it was like, where did that come from? What was the point of it? It was just like, he dropped out of, the robot dropped out of her eyesight for a split second. She said, where'd he go? Oh, I see him now. Okay, goodbye.
Okay, bye.
And that was, I thought, a plot point that was going to go somewhere, but it actually just ended right there.
Like so many.
Yeah.
But yes, I derailed us from moving on to another very important person in the movie.
G.W. Bailey.
Yes, who is our very best friend, who was just in Runaway.
We've seen this is our third movie with him now.
Yes.
As the emotionally overreactive whatever he plays.
Yeah, the very angry, very militant, blow it up first, ask questions later, dog named Rambo and mannequin.
But almost, yeah. In Runaway, he was
Assholes.
trying to be serious, but still kind of comedy. Mm-hmm. But he's pretty much the comedy villain in anything he plays.
Yeah.
He's
the screaming hothead villain who is, he is threatening without being threatening. He is an antagonist who just looks like he's the angry guy, the blowhard, who is the guy who is going to get thwarted
Classic
at the end,
80s.
and you can love to root against.
And you can just be like, Dad, you're embarrassing me. Yeah, he's great, and he never lets you down. He is always 100% giving you so much acting and just serving up so much villain. Like
and the award for most acting goes to.
Well, in this movie, I'd say there's at least one other contender for most acting.
Okay, so the elephant in the room is Fisher Stevens as who's full on in brown face. A Caucasian actor playing an Indian character.
Yep, complete with every possible stereotype that you could even think to throw at this movie.
Yeah, so this is definitely other than just the 80isms, this is the part that doesn't hold up, obviously.
I will say one thing in the actor's defense, Fisher Stevens' defense.
And this is and so as you bring this up, I did want to touch that this is my deep cut and wanted to go into this a bit deeper. But
Okay.
He was originally cast for the same role, except it was more of just a conventional nerdy sidekick role, which is what he is. Then he got fired from that role because they got Bronson Pinchot,
Balki Bartakamus.
Yes, and they picked him up, and they started the film with him, and then it turns out he got signed for Perfect Strangers and had to duck out of the thing. So they hired Fisher Stevens back, and they said, you know what? We liked what he was doing. Why don't you do that? Why don't you be an ethnic nerd?
So he'd been cast as a white character because the character is named Ben, and then the production decided to change him to Indian. And when they brought him back on board,
and he said,
Fisher Stevens, who was 21.
I've already been fired from this role once, so I better just do what they tell me to do.
And the rest is history.
History.
But he didn't make the trailer.
He did not. Or maybe someone recut it and they were just like, oh, you know what?
You might have seen his face once, like in a brief flash in the trailer, but you don't hear him, and there's a reason.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
Yes.
Okay, so do you think Johnny 5 would be offensive to robots?
Number 5.
Johnny, number 5 in the future, robots watching this too?
Oh, yeah. It would be like, oh my God, why does he have to be every robot stereotype? Oh, a butterfly. I crushed it. Oh, disassemble. Yeah, I think they're going to be like, we were never like that. All we wanted to do was blow things up and make cocktails.
The other numbers 1 through 4 were very jealous of his screen time.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, 3 of them got a little more screen time, so there was one that totally got boned, but he was tough to work with.
Yeah. He wanted to know why he couldn't also do an accent, because like Johnny 5 gets to, once he has a personality, once he gets struck by lightning, which is like the impetus for this whole thing, is that they're doing a display.
Life-giving lightning.
A show, like
a trade show.
A sales pitch. It's a sales pitch.
For these deadly assassin robots. And then they're like...
With laser bazookas.
That blow things up.
I've wondered why the real... It's like burying the lead. You have a laser bazooka. Yes, but wait, we put it on a robot. Couldn't a human do the exact same thing?
It's kind of like Spider-Man 2. It's like, yes, I've found the solution to all of our energy problems. Here, let me just put on these giant robot arms. Everyone's like, oh, what's wrong? It's like, no, I'm not done. Can we have questions after the demonstration?
Okay,
everyone.
Walk it back.
Right. Does anyone have a question about the energy thing? No one. No. Do you have a question about the arms? All the hands come up.
We want to know about the robots. Can they mix a drink?
Yes, that's why you have robots, because no soldier could ever make a gin and tonic.
So yeah, this movie. So he Johnny 5 or number 5.
Number 5.
He is kind of awakening as a consciousness. I felt like it was just way too quick, though, that he just kind of went from, aware of everything. It was, to me, and maybe this is the portion that I was on my phone, but it just seemed like as soon as he got consciousness, he was like a child, and there wasn't any kind of like development or like baby steps of learning about things. He was just immediately interested in everything. Like it had switched, and then he was like a child.
But his voice and his entire personality changed. Just like in Flight of the Navigator, right? So he got struck by...
Which was done by the same voice actor.
Was it?
Yeah.
I thought Flight of the Navigator was Paul Rubens.
No.
Am I straight up wrong about that? My whole life has been a lie.
I don't know, probably.
Oh.
It's not the first time.
You heard it here first. Krissy's life is a lie.
Lies. But yeah, he immediately has this like cartoonish, childlike voice. But he never goes through like the other robots that are all like speaking spells. They're like, your gin and tonic, shaken, not stirred.
Intruder targeted.
To the left.
15 degrees, fire.
Yeah,
they're all like that.
Yeah,
they're like Cylons.
They sound like Teddy Ruxpin.
From the director of War Games, do you think he just couldn't get this out of his system? Mm-hmm. Or do you think it was more kind of like, well, he directed War Games, let's give him this script.
Let's give him this.
He knows how to do this sort of thing.
It's kind of the cute flipped version of
E.T. meets War Games.
Yeah.
That's what it is. That's probably exactly how it was pitched. Look, we got E.T., we got War Games. We'll make E.T. a robot, and then he'll come alive, and he'll have this laser cannon. He'll be able to shoot army guys.
That big sequence where he's learning to dance with Ali Sheedy and watching Saturday Night Fever.
Yeah,
the director directed that too.
Saturday Night Fever. So it's Saturday Night Fever meets E.T. and War Games.
Okay. But, like, did I just completely miss it? But, like, he doesn't ever seem to have that moment that you expect to see in these kinds of movies where he sees something, like...
Doesn't have a moment of consciousness?
Where he's just like,
he goes
like,
from being a
innocent
robot looking for input to, oh my God, I'm self-aware.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could have cut
he
out...
squishes a grasshopper.
Yeah, so
When he realizes,
his big realization is realizing things die.
Yes, the young woman who teaches him about death is his is his savior. So it's a little weird, but
it's a lot weird. Everything about it is weird.
Well, yeah, but
also I think it takes place over about 15 minutes.
That's what we were talking about, the span of time that this was taking place, and he shows up in her van the first night. Mm-hmm. And then the first night is all input. Let's read every book in the house, and then try to make spaghetti and just annoy the hell out of her.
And then it just Johnny Five wants to have an eat, pray, love moment. He just wants to.
And then the following day, he gets shot at, and they meet. Ali Sheedy meets Steve Guttenberg. He shots at. He gets turned off. They shove him in the van. Somehow he turns himself back on, and then hijacks the van, and then immediately goes back to her house.
Yeah.
Second night in the tub, and now he's got like a robo boner. Which
I roll,
but it's
no longer friend of the podcast. Craig.
Well, the second night is very. There's some tension between them. There's a romantic tension because that's where they have the romantic dance together.
Yeah, they do, and it is gross, and it's so weird that they're like trying to have this narrative over the top of that. So weird. But it makes more sense than her falling in love with Steve Guttenberg.
But since Steve Guttenberg is in this movie, he's the one who's getting Ali Sheedy. So you're just thinking, well, is there going to be like a love triangle between number 5, Steve Guttenberg, and Ali Sheedy? The second night is just sort of all right, well, let's move on to night number 3, where they, after a bunch of other stuff goes down, they steal another van, and then they get out in the desert, and they get stranded out in the desert. Somehow, number 5, while Ali Sheedy's asleep in the desert, alone in the desert, he drives back to town and kidnaps Steve Guttenberg with another van and brings him back. And then,
so many vans.
Now let's talk about the meaning of life. What defines the meaning of life?
Yeah, and why is he...
It all culminates in a really, truly, genuinely...
They missed a great moment because he decides that he's not going to kill. He refuses to kill. Yeah. Like the key image of this movie is the beginning, like the opening where you see all these cute flowers and they roll over it with a tank.
The very first shot.
Yeah, the very first shot. And so he decides that he's not going to kill, disassemble. Like he doesn't want things to die, which is an unrealistic goal. But there's a scene.
For a guy who
there's a scene.
Time makes fools of us all, Johnny Five.
They're in a big chase, and he's with his super laser gun. He's shooting down trees to blocking their path. And
those trees are alive too. You are disassembling those living trees.
Yeah, they should have said like, no one died. Trees are alive.
They're
and then he should. Oh.
You killed all those trees, Johnny.
But
it would have been a good lesson.
Mm-hmm. They're in the desert discussing the meaning of life, and it all comes down to whether or not the sentient robot finds this really lousy joke funny.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is kind of the
it's like the Turing test moment.
Yeah. So Gutenberg has given him the ups and downs because he likes number 5. He doesn't quite buy in that he's alive because he created him, and
so he's trying to figure out.
He's bonding with him. He's trying to use logic to do all this, and so all night long.
That's basically what it is to be a parent. You're just like, I feel like I made you, but I don't understand what's happening in there.
So this is really sort of an allegory about parenthood.
It is.
Steve Guttenberg is father to us all.
Oh, God.
That's what I've taken.
That's
from
the T-shirt.
Because you have to misinterpret.
Stop watching that movie.
But the joke is also problematic and like racist in its intention.
It's one of those priest, rabbi, and I don't know,
and a third guy
Polish
walking
persuasion
to him.
or something.
Third person.
Yeah, like he's basically teaching him racism and casual joking about
but
that sort of thing.
It's a stupid joke. It's very poorly delivered, and
Yeah,
for
he
some
should have
reason-
paused before the last part.
Yeah, you got to punch the punchline. I could have taught him that.
Yeah,
he's obviously never had an improv class.
Well, Steve Gutenberg's not one for comedy.
It's in the mail.
But and then he starts. Number 5 starts laughing hysterically, like it. When I remember watching it as a kid, the way he was laughing, I thought, like, oh my god, he broke Johnny Five.
It's exploding.
It sounds like it just sounds like he's about to explode, and apparently that is the only funny thing Johnny Five heard the entire movie, and he spent all night watching television, and he was cracking jokes all throughout the movie, but that was the first time he actually laughed. So he likes bad jokes, and therefore he is alive.
I guess so. Yeah.
Just like a child.
Yep.
Can I say something about Steve Gutenberg's performance, at least?
Yes.
I'll start by talking about another actors in this. Austin Pendleton, who plays, I think his name is Howard. He is like the head of the robotics company.
Oh, yeah.
He's sort of the go-between between the military guys and the robot eggheads.
And he's in the Muppet movie, and he tries
That's what
to get
I was going
Kermit's
to say.
legs.
He likes working with puppets. I used to think he was also the dad in Alf, but it turns out that was another guy.
Oh yeah, it was a
So
different
I
guy.
thought this guy he only works with puppets.
But it's a similar guy. Like it's similar enough to be.
They're probably in the same auditions.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, hey.
They see each other a lot. Yeah, in the
But
room.
You took that last job from me.
He was telling someone about this movie. He was, I guess, in it pretty much from the ground floor as to his character, but he's saying the original draft of the script was so much better than what came out, and it was basically because they cast Steve Gutenberg as the lead. He didn't have an issue with Steve Gutenberg as a person. He was a good guy and a good actor, and he did what he was going to do. But the character that he played, Newton, I think his name is?
Newton Crosby.
Newton
Yeah,
Crosby.
yeah.
That character was supposed to be this introverted, antisocial nerd. And he was supposed to basically be afraid of other people. He did not want to deal with other people. He was a sociopath.
Yeah.
And his arc
Which,
was
like,
about
we're
communicating
teaching
with
him
the world.
how to love as well.
And because they cast Steve Gutenberg in this role, he was just this affable kind of
Hammy.
kooky guy. Yeah, and there was none of that character stuff came out in Gutenberg's performance because Gutenberg is Gutenberg. They said that
Gutenberg cannot goot. Not goot.
They originally wanted apparently Dustin Hoffman to play that character.
Yeah.
And that would have been. Can you imagine how different that would have been if you had played a just sort of an internalized Dustin Hoffman, like a sort of Rain Man kind of Dustin Hoffman, who has to come out of his shell to interact with society in order to rein in his creation and then realize that they're alive there. There would have been some meat to that bone, but it wouldn't have been nearly 80s.
Well, but the
Or like a
problem
Matthew
is
Broderick, even like a
somebody who
Wunderkind, you know.
slightly more humanity than Steve Gutenberg, because Steve Gutenberg has
Insufficiently human.
he has this thing where it's like it's almost a Bill Murray thing, where like Bill Murray's shtick is that like he's totally nonchalant and cares about nothing, but we're charmed by it and we're intrigued by it and we're on board for it and we love him in spite of it. But like Gutenberg just doesn't get across that line of being like, and you love me in spite of it, and it's like, actually no.
He's just constantly just bumping against the line, where it's like,
yeah, because he's
awkward.
totally rude to everybody. So I can see where you're saying the shades of like in the mouth of a different character that would sound different all the times, where he's like, the robots don't feel, they don't laugh, they don't love, they don't think anything, they're just machines. But I'm gonna teach this one to play the piano, so everybody get off my back
And give you the finger.
Yeah.
Which was, I guess, his favorite part.
Yeah,
So-
I'm loving Matthew Broderick for the part.
I think so.
Well, we'll go back in time and recast this movie.
Well, and I also think it would make more sense if Ali Sheedy was younger and more,
Naive?
yeah, just dumber. Like, I can't get over the whole robot alien thing.
Yeah.
That's the dumbest.
The fact that she spent an entire night realizing he does not look like an alien. You see number 5, even in weird lighting, which I admit, like the first time she saw him was in
It must
her
have been like a
van
robot alien
with red light and stuff, and then it didn't occur to her. She said, "Alien, okay," And then when he comes
so
out into the
excited.
light, it's clearly a robot. It may be a robot alien. It may be a robot from another planet, but it's clearly a robot. And
It's
she's
like
just
if
so
you
invested.
looked up robot in the dictionary, that would be the picture of a robot
is-
that comes up.
So,
Cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
all right. So, one thing I thought they did a great job is just the puppeteering in the movie.
Oh, yes.
You know, not only, I mean, it's hard to make a robot or any kind of creature have life. And they must have had really solid puppeteers on this one because he had a lot of personality and he had just the little things of how his
He had
hands
such
moved
an
and things like
expressive
that.
face, too.
Yeah.
Even
With
though it
his
was
little
2
flaps.
eyes.
Yeah, his eyebrows
like little
for
flaps.
for him and then the bad guys, they do so much for it. Like it's so effective. So yeah, props to the puppeteers.
It would not surprise me if they did like basically a proof of concept demonstration with the robot to like producers and said, all right, we want to make a movie and it's about this robot comes alive. This is a mock-up of the puppet we're going to use. And they show this thing, and they show the way it can express itself, the way it can move its arms and look like it's alive and dancing, even though it's just spinning on its treads. And you know, it can have reactions with its face where it's not even saying anything, but you can tell what it's
It
thinking
can
and
be
feeling.
lecherous and objectify a woman just
Exactly.
like
Just
anybody
like
else can.
Anyone can make that mistake.
Look how he goggles his eyes at the naked lady.
Yeah,
And
that's
so-
how you prove you're alive, man.
Yes, dude, totally. And so it was, I just imagined them, like, showing them the puppet and showing what they could do with the puppet, and then they say, all right, let's make it. And then going from there and thinking, we're going to make this groundbreaking thing about, whether a robot can be alive.
Yeah.
And then it just turns out, oh, what if we made it more like E.T.? What if we, instead of having this this reclusive genius who made it, we'll just make it Steve Gutenberg because that'll put butts in the seats. And then Ali Sheedy's pretty popular. Let's put her in it too. I don't really care what she does. She just got to get the guy at the end and maybe seduce the robot too if we can do that. And we'll see if we can get some white guy to play an Indian. And
Yeah, well,
it
but
just
I
kind of
think
fell apart as you
that
know.
what's missing though is the kids, right? Is like the innocence of the kids believing, that's what's
Yeah.
in ET.
Yeah,
As the kids versus adults angle, that kids, of course, can see straight through to the heart,
No
right?
kids in this movie.
Nope.
And no kids in
And
the
thank
sequel.
God, let's not expose them to any of this.
That's a mixed blessing right
Keep
there.
kids away from robots.
Yes. Keep them away. All right. So, on a scale of 1 robot-made gin and tonic,
How much input would we give it?
yes, to 10. Input.
What's our unit here? Gin
10
and tonic
out of-
or input?
How many gin and tonics?
How many gin and tonics? will
Wait, so is 10 gin and tonics meaning that it was a
Is this
difficult
your
movie to get
recommendation?
through?
Yeah, that is the trade-off there.
We could
Okay,
each
how many
many
butterflies?
laser bazookas would we give it?
Okay.
Laser bazookas. There you go.
Laser bazookas.
I'm gonna give it my highest recommendation ever.
What?
Is of 4. I'm gonna give it a 7.
Ooh, wow, that's not very high.
Madness.
Which is high for me.
Madness, Craig Michael Curtis.
Yes, thank you.
Well, why? Why are you giving it a 7?
I really liked this movie. It was sweet in its own way, and it actually started to talk about stuff that was beyond what you normally hear in a movie of this caliber, this sort of popcorn movie. It was talking about what is life. And
Well, I think you're right. It started to.
it took an effort, and it went in some
yeah.
directions. Obviously, it didn't succeed all the way in many of those aspects.
And some of the one-liners
But
were charming, I thought.
I thought there was enough in this movie that I enjoyed. I kind of chuckled at some one-liners. There was the old couple who puts a tracking device in the back of the truck, and then they get surrounded by military guys, and then the old guy and the old lady are in the cab of the truck, and the lady says, "I hope you took the weed out of the glove compartment."
Yeah, that was good.
Which was a funny moment. It had its moments, and I enjoyed the moments, and they made more of an effort than you usually see in this kind of popcorn movie from the 80s. That's why I give it a more. I mean, you obviously have to take one down for the one particular character, but apart from that,
Oh, we can expand that to at least 3, I'm sure.
Oh, yes.
Okay, yeah, go for it. How many laser bazookas is this worth to you?
So, yeah, I agree with your points. I personally, I'm going to give it a 5.5. Half a bazooka. Just half of that bazooka. But yeah, no, I agree. I do think that there's definitely some stuff that makes it difficult, and it is a very 80s movie, and a lot of it doesn't quite hold up. But having said that, in its defense, I'm defending the 5.5 and not the 4.5 below it. I mean, it is a solid director, and he was able to make a movie like this definitely a kind of a notch above, I think, what these generally are. You know, like a lot of the puns
but what
and
are you
these little
comparing
moments.
it to? Like, what is a worse version of this?
Mac and Me.
Okay, fair. Asked and answered, Nathan Blackwell.
Well done.
Yeah, I guess.
My cap off to you, sir.
Yeah,
That was good.
I would definitely rate in terms of this kind of like these movies chasing E.T. or Star Wars. I hope I rated The Last Starfighter much higher than this.
I hope
Yeah,
so too.
I think I'd probably give that like a 7 or something. But yeah, I mean, it's not one that I would show kids today, but it's one that I do look back fondly enough and not feel regret and shame as a child.
Just a note, whether or not you show your kids Short Circuit today, do not show them Short Circuit 2. There is a very dark moment that still haunts me to this day. I have not seen that movie in 30 years either. And my God, there's just like a moment there that makes me shudder. And yeah, don't show your kids Short Circuit. It's
Input.
It is. If Johnny Five were a human, it would go from a PG movie to an R movie, in a violence way.
But because why?
Yeah.
Oh,
I have no memories at all of Short Circuit 2.
He goes to New York to talk to Ben, your favorite character in this movie.
Oh my God.
Who's now the new human character, and also Michael McKean is in that one as his sidekick. And
Wait, are you telling me they couldn't get Goots?
they could not get Goots or Sheedy. Sheedy does a voiceover explaining why they're not in this movie.
Okay.
They're in Montana, which is how they end this movie.
Oh, right.
And they hear
Dear
Ben.
Johnny Five.
They heard Benny was in trouble, and so we sent you our robot because they want to get rid of him anyway. But somehow, hijinks ensue. Somehow,
Because he's a
Johnny
perv.
Five gets sucked into the mafia, and then the mafia decide he confronts the mafia boss and says, "Why are you doing this? You're not. You're supposed to be my friend." And then the mafia boss sends his guys to beat him on the street, like savagely beat him, like smash in his eye, crush his arm, rip out his guts, and the guy's like, kill him, and Johnny Five, please, I'm alive, don't hurt me, and he's like moaning and screaming in pain, and a splatter of motor oil goes across the guy's face as he smashes. It's just so.
That was the day when Tarantino was on set. And they
Yeah,
were like,
I
"Do you
guess
wanna-"
because loss of innocence right
Yeah.
there for a young Frank Michael Curtis. That was.
So Scorsese made a child movie, a kids movie.
For a moment, he wanted to explore the idea of robots.
So yeah,
Okay.
I digress. How many laser cannons do you
jeez.
pick this
How
week?
many gin and
I'm
tonics did
only
you?
going to give it 3 because I didn't find it as fun. Like, I think for my money, if I'm going to sit down and watch a movie that has robots in it and I get my choice between the two, I'm watching Runaway again.
Yes.
And I'm going to live my life and be happy. And for me, it didn't get to the place where I was charmed and captured.
Not the way
again.
Mannequin did.
No. I love Mannequin. Everything about Mannequin is great. But what
You know what? He kills mannequins in the beginning of this movie.
Yeah.
That's probably why you don't like it. It's just
I
like
do
a
really
block
Right
like-
out of the gate.
I like mannequins, and I like to see them in 80s movies. So what is your deep cut recommendation based on Short Circuit? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. So, if you want to, I guess, dive deeper into the Fisher-Stevens aspect of this movie.
Okay.
So Aziz Ansari interviewed him or talked to him about this, in kind of a larger piece, just talking about actors and casting and race and things like that. It's a New York Times article called Aziz Ansari on acting, race, and Hollywood. So yeah, it's a nice look about, these are just people. Fisher Stevens, not to excuse the part, but these things are always a little more complicated. Like, he was a 21-year-old actor who just really wanted to break into Hollywood. He shouldn't have. It shouldn't have happened.
Yeah,
but in the 80s, though, like that movie Soul Man, and like it was not the big. Which is not in any way to say it's okay. It's not okay.
Right. It was still weird.
It was
no one knew who he was, and so if it had been like an established actor playing that role, there would have been
outcry.
a lot. Yeah, there would have been outcry, but they didn't know who Fisher Stevens was, and so everyone, I'm sure, assumed that he was an Indian actor. So even Aziz Ansari looked up to him because he thought he was an Indian actor. And it wasn't until he IMDb'd him in college and he found out that he was white
guy.
Then he got super angry. And so they have a neat conversation just talking about just humanizing the situation. So.
I love it. That's a great recommendation.
Good job. We'll have you on next time.
What about you?
I usually recommend another movie, but this time I'm going a different way. I'm going to go. And I'm going to recommend a TV episode, specifically a Star Trek The Next Generation episode called The Measure of a Man. And it's about Captain Picard and Data going on trial to determine whether Data, who is the android of the show, is considered the property of Starfleet or if he is considered a sentient being. And obviously he's an android, so it's a lot of what I like about this movie, which came before, so it is a philosophical debate on this. It's the first generation of this kind of debate. I think, obviously, this particular Star Trek episode, which is one of the best of the Next Generation episodes, goes into that where they actually have a court-martial trial to determine whether Data is considered property or an individual with his own rights. And so, that's my recommendation. I think it really hits home where this one, got a blooper single out of that particular debate. This really hits a home run on what that's about and the idea of what being a person is compared to just having, flesh and blood.
Another great one.
This better be good.
I am going to recommend, again, just to tie it back to Runaway, as I think I will tie everything back to Runaway for the rest of my life going forward.
My job here is done.
I'm going to recommend season 1 of HBO's Westworld as another robots. What does it mean? Are they alive? Do we get to have ownership of them and do whatever we want to them all the time? And also the music in it is really haunting and beautiful. I have the soundtrack and it's so worth picking up because it's like creepy, moody music, like you'd expect from an HBO series, but there are also player piano versions of like Radiohead and Nirvana songs that are you're listening to. That was part of the fun of watching the series for me, was like trying to pick out what the radio or the player piano was playing. Season 2 goes a little bananas, but I think season 1 is a solid piece worth a watch.
Excellent.
All right. Where can everybody find your books, Craig Michael Curtis?
Craig Michael Curtis. You can find my books online, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can also check out my Facebook page or craigmichaelcurtis.com.
What's a good entry book into your work?
I know if you are a fan of Voyage Trekkers, there is a Voyage Trekkers novella.
I am a fan.
Ooh, tell me more.
Voyage Trekkers Gambit of Chance, which has your favorite characters in that in a very digestible package. There's also another one I like, which is called Famous Adventurers Correspondence School, and it's actually set in the 80s. And it's relatively short, and you can get that as an ebook on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or wherever you get ebooks.
Great. So just check Craig Michael Curtis.
Craig Michael Curtis.
Gotcha.
Wonderful. And of course, everybody can find me at nctphoenix.com in the interwebs and at NCT Phoenix the Place in downtown Mesa.
Yay!
And
Nathan Blackwell, filmmaker, debonair, scallywag, squishystudios.com.
squishystudios.com. Find Most Excellent Pod wherever, pod stuff is. Find us on iTunes.
We've got reviews.
We do have reviews.
We promise to read them on our next episode.
So we've got 2, and we should just read one and then save one for the next one?
Yeah, let's spread it out. Spread out the love.
Okay.
But
we do,
if
we
you
have
leave us a
reviews.
review, we'll read it online as either a thank you or as a punishment.
Yep. But all of that stuff is really good. So please, like, rate, review, thumbs up.
It's not just to make us feel better. It actually helps other people discover the show. It improves the algorithm so it pops up on people's feed more.
Although reviews like this do make us feel better. Because here's what it says. From Just a Guy, 67, fun and unique opinions on some movies from the, quote, olden days. Never thought about Bender being a, quote, spy in The Breakfast Club. Completely changes the movie when you watch it again, especially in light of current student-teacher events. Oh, all right. Getting political. That was Krissy talking, not the reviewer. I don't know about Nathan being sexy, but I know for a fact Krissy is simply beautiful. I'm just going to cut it off and edit that part out. Which means I think my mom wrote this.
Yeah, I don't find that review helpful. Thank you.
But I think, Just a Guy 67 has to be a reference to Brain Candy.
Oh, I'll take it.
One of my favorite bits in Brain Candy. Leave us a review. You really don't have to comment on our physical attractiveness.
But if you want to, then CraigMichaelCurtis.com. Thank you.
Craig needs some of the love, yeah. Thank you so much for listening. We can't wait to see you again in our next episode where we are going to be watching RoboCop.
Yes, the double robot marathon.
We're just sticking with the robot theme. Yeah, we're going to be watching RoboCop.
So, welcome to the Robot Podcast,
Yes.
the 80s movie Robot.
We have a really cool guest, and we're excited about that one. Please come back and join us for the next episode. And, of course, when you're out there in the world, remember to keep the Most Excellent 80s Movie Podcast motto in mind. Be excellent to each other. And I'll be right here.
Is that from the other movie?
I'm confused.
Close enough.
Red Rum.